Our subject matter expert today is David Espindola, and we've asked him to join us as our AI expert because he's an entrepreneur. He lives in the future. There is no present for David. He lives in the future, consulting companies and guiding them through technology-driven transformations. His work centered on developing business strategies, leveraging innovation, and leading high-performing teams to solve problems and build meaningful products and services. And I'll get into the other part of what David does in a minute, but David, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Chris, and the entire Cerius team for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
I know my introduction didn't do justice. If you could give us a little bit more about yourself and your background.
Yeah, I'll be more than happy to do that. So I started my career in California, in Silicon Valley, at the heart of the computer industry, and I really fell in love with that environment. I worked at two very fast-growing startups, one of which did an IPO, so that was a really fun experience for me. And then after that, I went to work for Oracle. I was in a consulting organization. I worked with very large Fortune 500 companies doing large technology implementations and business transformation programs. And then after Oracle, I decided to pursue a CIO career. So I was a CIO apprentice at Zebra Technologies, where we did a very large business transformation program. And then I became the CIO of Flexera Software. And after that, about 7 years ago, I decided to just become an entrepreneur and an independent consultant. And that's what I've been doing since then. I'm doing some consulting work right now. I'm also on the advisory board for the University of Minnesota Technological Leadership Institute. And I have written a couple books.
I was going to say, in addition to being a thought leader, you are also a published author with a new book coming out. You can see it, and I love it, over your left shoulder, Soulful, You in the Future of Artificial Intelligence. Tell us a little bit about what you wanted to accomplish with this book.
Yeah, so about 2.5 years ago, I actually wrote my first book, which was called The Exponential Era. And in that book, what I did was I described several exponential platforms that are converging and that are creating just extraordinary transformation to business, to our lives in general. But one of those platforms really stood out for me, and that was AI. And so I thought that AI deserved a book of its own, and that's why I wrote the latest book.
I love it.
So, what I wanted to do with this book was really help the readers understand just the magnitude of the changes that AI will bring and help them prepare, develop the right skills to be able to get into this environment and really be ready for the collaborative effort between, the human side of things and AI.
Perfect. Well, I have no doubt that we will get into just a few of those things today and give us all just enough information to be dangerous. Let's start, since you are a futurist, let's start at the future and work backwards to the present. Broadly speaking, how do you see AI and robotics impacting or maybe even reshaping work as we know it, maybe 10 years from now? Where is this going?
Yeah, so I think it's fairly obvious that we're going to experience tremendous changes in the next coming years. Now, the challenge is the technology is changing so fast that it's nearly impossible to predict what those changes will be and what new jobs will become available. I think the best example that I can give is with this new position that just came out about 4 or 5 months ago of prompt engineer. So for those of you that don't know, a prompt engineer is somebody that can work effectively with these generative AI applications like ChatGPT and others, and they're able to input the text and the context that will give them the best output as they interact with these generative AI tools. So this is a position that, nobody could foresee. It's in very high demand right now. It pays extremely well. So we just don't know, what future opportunities may come up as this technology continues to develop. So the one thing that we can do is we can look at the signals that we can see today and then try to extrapolate that into the future. So I think it would be fairly safe to say that any job that is primarily algorithmic in nature, and by that I mean jobs where you basically follow a set of instructions, those jobs have a very high probability of being automated. But any tasks, any professions that require human capabilities, things like empathy, the ability to develop relationships, the ability to build trust, I think those jobs will continue to be in high demand.
You talk about some of the roles that it will impact versus others that it won't impact. What are some tangible examples of maybe those repetitive knowledge base versus what you're talking about?
Yeah, so I think a good example is what we see in the legal profession. So if you take the work of a paralegal, for example, that work requires gathering data, sorting data, putting that together to help a lawyer make a case. So I think the work of a paralegal is exposed to AI, because those are the things that AI can do extremely well, extremely fast, much better than a human being can do. But the work of a lawyer is different, right? So the lawyer needs to be able to understand the human side of things, needs to use empathy, needs to ask the right questions. And so I think from a legal profession standpoint, the work of a lawyer will continue to be in high demand, even though the more manual type of work that's typically done by a paralegal may be exposed.
Perfect. One question that I see coming up here before we go too much into detail, from a broad standpoint, is there a difference, or what is the difference between AI and machine learning? I'm guessing there's a few questions here, especially from maybe some who are a little more advanced than I am.
Yeah, so AI, think of it as a broader term. And I think this was coined way back in the 1950s. And the whole idea was that artificial intelligence was supposed to be what we now call AGI, or artificial general intelligence, which would be the equivalent of our human intelligence. And then within AI, there are several subdivisions, and machine learning is just a capability that AI has to allow the machines to learn, whether it's under supervised learning or unsupervised learning. There are different categories that you go into, but it's basically a subset of AI that allows the machines to learn.
So taking this broad category of AI, how should companies now start to prepare? Because that's going to be hard. We've got jobs and roles like the prompt engineer that may exist 2 years ago that we have no idea exist today. There's no title, there's no job description. What are some ways that companies should be approaching AI and robotics as it progresses?
Yeah, so my general advice would be that companies that really want to stay competitive need to embrace not just AI, but all of these emerging technologies that are coming out. And in my first book, The Exponential Era, I actually provide a methodology that companies can follow in order to be able to address these changes that are happening at an unprecedented speed. And some of the things that I propose in that methodology, I'm not reinventing the wheel of things that we are all familiar with, but it's things that are really important for us to adopt as executives. For instance, creating a learning organization. So we need to get into this mindset of, things are changing, they're changing very fast, and we need to get good at understanding how those changes impact our business, and then develop a learning organization that's absorbing those changes as quickly as possible. So that means, providing training. That means doing some experimentation. You may want to create some pilots and get a subset of your customers that are more open to innovative ideas, and run a pilot with them to see if this is something that you want to pursue further and grow. So it's all about this, it's the mindset that we see with startups, right? Startups are very good at this, at just pivoting and learning and finding a product market fit. And I think large organizations need to adopt the same kind of mentality.
The tough thing when you're a large organization and you want to integrate in that change, do you see some leadership roles coming about from this to help shepherd that change and that adoption?
Yeah, so I think, the leadership skills are the same skills that we've been talking about for quite some time. So I don't think there's anything really new here. It's about, being able to be in touch with the edges of the organization. I think it's Andy Grove that said that changes happen at the edge of the organization, like snow melts on the edges, is the example that he provided. So it's very important for executives to really be in touch with customers, with suppliers, with the actual employees that are actually handling customers. And so just being engaged, being open to learning, and to develop an organization that is open to learning as well. So it's part of that culture. And I think the best example that I can provide is what we saw happen at Microsoft. So as you all know, in the early 2000s, Microsoft missed the three most significant tendencies, movements in the software industry. They missed cloud, they missed social, they missed mobile. And they realized that they needed to make some significant changes in order to, become again the most influential software company in the world, which they have done. And that came with promoting Satya Nadella to CEO. And when Satya Nadella came in, one of the very first things that he did was change the culture at Microsoft. And he actually attributes that to the success that we're seeing with Microsoft today. So that he changed the Microsoft culture from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And what that means is that when you have a growth mindset, you are open to learning new things, you're open to listening to other people, you're open to absorbing new information. And that's what he did. And I think it's really quite an interesting case study with Microsoft.
I'm so glad that you brought up culture. And I'm always going to ask a question about talent. I'm in the talent industry here. When you look at the progression of talent that we want to bring into our company and the culture that we need to evolve in order to keep pace with this and take advantage of it, really, it's going to be a big competitive advantage. You look at 10 years ago, everyone was doing cyber programs. Universities were adding cybersecurity, coursework. Where do you see now the education going with it? And any suggestions for companies to vet for those types of adaptive learners and to fit that culture?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. So first of all, the hard skills that have been in demand for quite some time, I think they will continue to be in demand. So people that can use analytical skills and that understand technology, those skills will continue to be in demand. But I think where we'll see a change is in that we now have AI that can provide a lot of the expertise that we may not need as many experts in specific fields anymore. But what we do need is people that are very skilled in being able to ask the right questions, people that are good with lateral thinking. And that is the ability to go to different domains, listen to the experts in those domains, and then connect the dots, be able to come up with your own conclusions, your own solutions. So the human in the loop here, if you will be the orchestrator. It's the person that's able to really take the output from AI and then ask the question, does this make sense? Does this match with my intuition, my experience, everything that I've learned over the years? So to that extent, I think the more experience you have, the broader your outreach, the better prepared you'll be to deal with those types of situations.
Fantastic. And when you look at, and that also gives a good template for interviewing and the types of individuals that we're looking to fit that culture. How do companies and teams need to also evolve in order to adapt AI? So we talked about talent in the individuals. How is the team concept going to evolve to adapt to it?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So, again, it goes back to the cultural side of things. We need to develop people and recruit people that are very good at collaborating with others and with AI. So, again, I talk about the fact that we have the hard analytical skills that will continue to be important. But I think more and more we're going to see the soft skills play a significant role in people that are going to be successful. And obviously that involves teamwork as well. And the whole concept of going from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset also plays a role here, because the example that Nadella gives is that if you have a fixed mindset, you think you already know everything you need to know, and you're not open to listening to others. And I think that's not a good way to think about things going forward. You really need to have that growth mindset and be open to different ideas, different concepts, diversity in general. So I think those are going to be very important skills to have in the future.
Perfect. That really gives us a recruitment and a talent roadmap there. I'm going to shift a little bit and address the elephant in the room, especially my husband, the sci-fi fanatic. There are a lot of concerns. I've recently in a Vistage CEO group, and everyone had their opinion on AI and ChatGPT and how it's being used in the workforce and in schools. A lot of concerns and questions being raised about it. What do you see as some of the positives and negative aspects of this technology and the trend that's going on?
Yeah, so I think on the positive side, this technology has so much potential. It's really quite remarkable. I think AI can help us do things like help us find cures for thousands of diseases. AI can help us deal with some of the environmental concerns that we have. AI may be able to create abundance where we can have enough material goods that will, meet the basic material needs for most of humanity. So I think the positive side of this technology is very compelling, and I think we need to just continue developing this technology. Now, obviously, there are concerns as well. There's the negative side of this, and the ones that really stand out to me are things like the potential for an arms race driven by AI. The potential that this technology gets in the hands of the wrong people. So this is a very powerful technology. It has potential to create a lot of damage. And if it becomes available to people that have the wrong intentions, it could be a real issue. And then there are, just several ethical concerns that we talk about continuously. There are things like bias and privacy, the potential for it to spread misinformation. So these are all legitimate concerns. I think we have, a lot of work ahead of us to address those issues. They're not easy issues to address. And there's a lot of very smart people working on this right now.
David, I'm going to have to disagree with you on one thing here, somewhat facetiously, of you're telling me that technology has the opportunity to spread incorrect information. Say it isn't so, because everything I read on the internet is true. There is absolutely no way that it could be used to spreading misinformation.
How can that be possible, right?
Hopefully, we've spent the last 20 years educating. Even my 10-year-old son, I think, has that one down.
It's funny that you say that. I just had that same conversation with my wife because we were talking about this exact same topic. And I said, I think we've learned quite a bit in the last few years. So we're not as, as inclined to believe everything that we listen to or read anymore.
I have to say, speaking of my 10-year-old son, and I start guiding his path towards college, how much does this prompt engineer pay?
So I hear it's paying quite a bit. I hear somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 a year. So it's a very well paying position because there's high demand and low supply. So it's how the market works.
Chris, is it still time to have your son switch from a music major?
Yeah, he doesn't start college till the fall. So him and I will have lunch later today and discuss this prompt engineer role. Sounds very exciting.
Fantastic. David, I'm a visual example type case study individual. I'd love to understand now, taking the broad, we've gone down this path a little bit more, looking at real application.
Yeah.
What are you typically called in to do? Because I'm going to guess that companies are everything from how do I use this? I feel like I'm behind the times. They're not saying, hey, David, I want you to come in and help us adapt or implement AI. What are they actually saying and why are they bringing you in?
Yeah, so I think one of the challenges that we see is that AI can be applied to so many different functions within an organization that sometimes it's hard to just prioritize, where do we start? How do we go about getting this thing to help us address some of the most important parts of our business? So just to give you a few examples of where this technology is being used today. So in the area of services, for instance, we see the chatbots that are able to provide customer service and able to make personalized recommendations based on the knowledge that the company has of customers, able to solve problems by having access to knowledge base and just talking customers through, problem resolution. We see it in manufacturing. So we're used to seeing robots in a manufacturing environment, and I think we're going to see more and more automation to the point where we can have autonomous or semi-autonomous manufacturing capabilities with few or no human intervention. So, just the ability for us to use sensors and image processing to detect defects and when things break down in a factory, those things are becoming more and more automated. On the supply chain side of things, we're seeing robotics being used for packaging. We're seeing robotics being used in warehousing, for delivery. We see the advent of autonomous vehicles that could be a game changer for how goods are delivered. In sales and marketing, we see things like ChatGPT that can help us create content and be more creative with that content. AI can help us also personalize that content to our customers. So the ability for us to engage customers in a sales and marketing environment is another one that I see. There are several examples. So AI is something that can be used in multiple functions within an organization. And I think the challenge is for the organizations to really sit down and think about, where can I get the most bang for the buck? Where can I start getting my hands dirty, learning how this technology works, and getting some initial experimentation going, and maybe even drive some pilots with some customers.
It's interesting. I can see through your illustrations where we're evolving to, and where if there was a supply chain issue, you would bring in a supply chain person, versus now in the application of AI, we'd supplement the supply chain, the operations, the leadership that we have in place with experts like yourself to assess, figure out the application, and put together the plan. But it's that generalist or that functional role inside the company that then is going to carry it forward and help with the adoption and the change. I can start to see how you're talking about general leadership partnering with SME experts like yourself.
Yeah, I think it's a mindset on how you go about doing strategic planning, right? So strategic planning used to be a long process that would take companies, several years to just write the plan and follow the plan. And things are changing so fast that you need to be a lot more dynamic these days. You got to be constantly, we have to have this ambidextrous capability where you take advantage of your leadership position in the business that you're in now, but at the same time, you got to be thinking about what's coming next, and you got to be doing experiments, and you got to be doing pilots to be able to see what fits your business and what doesn't.
I'm glad you brought up experiments and pilots, and I want to focus on this just for a minute before we go into final advice and wrap up. What are some ways that companies can kind of dip their toe, especially smaller companies that don't necessarily have huge departments and R&D and resources to do this? You talked about pilots.
Yeah, so it's again no different than what startups have to deal with, right? So you have to be able to, and you don't really need a very large team of 500 people to do some of these things. In fact, Amazon, the way they go about doing some of these projects, they say you got to have no more than a group of people that you can feed with 2 large pizzas, right? I think that was Bezos' thing. So, you don't need a very large team to be able to do some of the prototypes and pilots and start experimenting with some of these technologies. Get a group of people that are motivated, people that want to learn, get them together. It could be, 2, 3, 5 people, and just get started. So I think the most important thing is just lean into action, lean into moving forward, and not get stagnated and not be afraid to take those steps.
I love it. I heard the term recently, find a way to say yes and just do it.
Yeah.
No,
but,
yes, no, yes, but.
Yeah, you got to say yes, but the counter to that is you have to be smart about what you say yes to, right? So I think prioritizing is really important because you can't do it all at once. So I think it's that balance. I want to say yes, but I want to learn as quickly as possible so that I know what are the smart things that I should be saying yes to, and what are the things that I should be saying no to. And that's where that, experimentation comes into play, because you can very quickly, within days, find out, is this something that matters to me? Is this something that's going to move the needle, or something that just doesn't make sense to my business? So the quicker you can learn, the quicker you can pivot, the better off you will be.
I love it. Before we wrap up here, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. And I know that we've just scratched the surface. Welcome to reach out to us. We can help facilitate a more deeper and detailed discussion, or certainly David's new book, Soulful, You in the Future of Artificial Intelligence. David, what may be some final message you would leave with our audience?
So, I know that these are scary times for a lot of people. We're experiencing a lot of change, and I certainly sympathize with that. And I hear so much, negative, pessimistic messages in media in general. So I want to leave with a very positive, very optimistic message. Just think about the fact that for the very first time in human history, we have everything that we need to create sustainable abundance. So imagine a future where we could produce enough material goods to meet all the basic needs of all of humanity. Imagine a future where we can use the deflationary power of technologies to lower the cost of living, so that most people across the globe could live a life of dignity. And imagine a world where machines can do all the work that we don't like doing, the things that don't fulfill our needs to seek for a higher purpose, so that we can then focus on the things that we enjoy. So that's the future that I hope for all of us.
I thank you. The Pollyanna and me really appreciated the positive ending on the positive note. Thank you for joining us, David. And as everyone knows, I always let Chris Shepard, our COO, have the last word, no matter what it is. Chris, any final words before we let everyone get on with their week?
No, I really appreciate everyone attending. David, thanks so much for your positive and yet very specific message. AI is not going anywhere, machine learning is not going anywhere, but you really give us a context for how we should interact with it and how it can help us grow professionally and personally. Thanks so much for everyone for your time today. There's a link on CeriusExecutives.com/speaker series for more of these that we have coming up on other topics. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back real soon.